Hello YouTube universe and guitar players around the world. I am showing you a video of my Guitar Fetish exotic tone woods all wood acoustic electric guitar. I got this for Christmas this year, and I did a review on it. You can check that out on another video. I did a pretty extensive review on this guitar, but what I'm going to do now is replace the strings. I'm going to condition the neck. I'm going to polish the frets with steel wool, and I'm going to oil the neck, and I'm going to lower the action on this guitar by adjusting the saddle a little bit. So those are the couple things I'm going to walk you through on this video. I am not a luthier, as you can tell from my makeshift neck rest. I have to build myself a quality neck rest, but even though this is a beautiful guitar and something that I really like, and it's in great new shape, you shouldn't be afraid to work on your guitars. You can probably make them play better just by putting a little effort in and a little attention. So I have some sandpaper. I'll show you how I will mark and then adjust the saddle to lower the saddle a little bit, which hopefully will provide better action on the guitar. I will show you how I mark off the frets and polish them, and then I will show you how I oil the neck and then put a new set of D'Addario strings on this guitar and get it all strung up, and we'll see how it sounds. So looking forward to getting started. I'm going to start by taking the strings off. I'll just pause the video while I remove the strings. One thing that I like about the factory string job that came on this guitar is that they have multiple winds on each stem here for each string. And that's going to be helpful because even though I'm removing these strings, I'm going to loosen them at the head here, and then I'm going to take them out at the body. I want to keep these strings on the guitar at the head because I might need to insert them as I adjust the action on this guitar. So I'll take the strings off to work on the fret board and to work on the frets, and I'll put them back on as I'm checking the action when I adjust the saddle. And then after everything is good and the guitar is where I want it to be, I will take these strings off and remove them and then put new set on. But having the multiple winds here allows me to loosen up the strings and still keep the strings on the tuning pegs, which I think is a good feature. And someone on another video said that when you remove one set of strings from one side, tie them together in a loop so that they stay together and stay out of the way. It's a pretty good idea. When you're removing the bridge pins, it might not matter, it might not make a difference, but in case it does, when you're removing these, in case the slots on some of these are wider for some than others, a trick that I saw in other YouTube videos is to tape them together in the position where they came out. And that way you can put them back in the same way. So what you see me doing here is taping them up. Then I would fold this over, and then with a Sharpie here, I would mark this as low E, high E. Not that the high E matters, but that way I know the orientation of these bridge pins when they go back into the guitar. Okay, so now I'm gonna pull these bottom strings out. And after I get these strings out, I'm going to loop these and tie them in a knot and then put them off to the side. And that gives me access to the bridge plate, to the saddle, and it gives me access to work on the neck. So I'll go ahead and tie these in a granny knot, and then I'll pull these other three out and tie those in a granny knot and put them on the other side. Okay, I took my time and I masked off this guitar. I used painter's tape, as you can see, and masked off each fret. This should protect the fretboard while I dress these frets, and you can kind of see in the pictures as it catches the light that even though I've only had this guitar less than a month, only a couple weeks, the frets could use some polishing. So I'm going to work on them now. I'm going to try two different things. I do have a steel wool pad, so I'm going to use steel wool, but I'm also going to use 2000 grit sandpaper. I have sheets of 2000 grit sandpaper, which is used for auto detailing, for pool cue making, and for other things. It's more of a polishing thing than sanding off metal. So I'm going to see how this sandpaper works. I'm going to hit it with some steel wool first, and then finish it with this 2000 grit sandpaper. I just cut a small little bit so I can work the corners. But you can see where the strings sat on the frets and caused a little bit of a rub imperfection. The frets look like they're a little bit grimy. Hopefully between the steel wool and the sandpaper will smooth these out. So I'm going to just start working the steel wool in, and I'll show you the end result when it's done. Okay, so I used some steel wool and the 2000 grit sandpaper on the neck of the guitar, and I'm hoping that the camera can pick this up, but I want to show you the detail and the polish that it puts on the frets. So I've done like the first 13 or so frets to where the fretboard joins the body, but if you look, you can see how much smoother the frets are, and then you'll see right here where it joins the guitar, you can see how it gets dull again. So I don't know if the camera's going to do it justice, but right here where the body joins the guitar, I did not do these frets yet, okay? These frets still need to be done, but the frets before them are done. So you can see the difference between what you get from the factory from Guitar Fetish and then what you get if you spend a little bit of time. Now, when I did this, I basically just rubbed the frets with steel wool for 5 seconds. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Here, I'll do this one for you. Basically took the steel wool and 5 seconds. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Then I flip the steel wool to a different spot, just in case different fibers catch the frets differently. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And that's really all it took. And then, I happen to have 2000 grit sandpaper, so I'm using that, but you don't even need that. But if you have it, it's a nice way to kind of finish off the frets with a little bit of polish. So I'll do it with some of this. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. You can see the difference between this fret now and the rest of the frets after it. And that's kind of what we're trying to go for. So I think everybody, when they get a new guitar, should polish their frets. It'll probably make the guitar sound better. It'll probably make the strings last longer, and it'll probably make the guitar last longer. So something that's good to do. I'm going to finish off these last few, and then we'll go to the next step. I removed the masking tape, the painter's tape. The frets are all polished and clean, and they look stunning. That's just how all frets should look. One thing I noticed when I took the masking tape off is that the bone nut came out, which isn't a big deal. Don't panic if the nut comes out. Some people do glue it in with a very, like a hodgepodge or an art glue. They don't use a strong glue to put the nut in because they want it to be able to be removed later with just a simple knock or a simple tap. This nut is held in by hundreds of pounds of pressure from the strings, so it doesn't need to be glued down. But when this nut did come out, the one thing I did do was check to make sure that the nut fits into the slot, which it does. It's a good fit, so I'm not worried about that at all. This will actually make it easier for me to maybe sand this edge down to make it a little more comfortable to play, but I'm not worried about that. I'm going to use linseed oil. I'm going to put a little bit of linseed oil on Q-tips, and then I'm going to work the linseed oil into the neck of the guitar. Some people use lemon oil. Keep in mind, lemon oil, I've heard on a couple different sites that lemon oil is not actually lemon juice or lemon oil. That's too acidic, some people say, for the neck. Some people swear by using lemon juice or lemon oil, actual lemon oil. From what I understand, the lemon oil you buy for guitars is just scented that way. It's not necessarily made with lemons, but I could be wrong there. I'm going to use linseed oil. I have used lavender oil in the past. It worked great and the guitar smelled great. I've used this in the past and it does a really nice job. So I'm going to use this now and just put a little on the Q-tip, working into the frets, rub it in, and I'll show you what it looks like when each section of the fretboard is coated with the boiled linseed oil. Well, I'm very glad that I am treating this neck with some oil. As you can see, I'm letting this oil sit in for about a minute or two before I wipe it off and buff it out. But you can see the difference between the first 6 frets and from 7 fret on. You can see the difference in what the oil is doing in terms of conditioning the neck. It is December. The guitar was shipped in December. It's now January 1st. The guitar was very, very dry, probably because of the time of the year. So putting some oil onto the fretboard here made a huge difference, and also putting some oil on the bridge plate made a nice difference. So I'm going to let that sink in for a minute or two. I'm going to finish doing the lower half of the fretboard, and then I'm going to remove any excess and buff it, and then this should be complete. So I just wanted to pause halfway to show you the difference and give you an idea for it. Again, anytime you buy a new guitar, it probably makes sense, or if you're changing the strings on your current guitar, it might make sense to spend a little time and give a little love to the frets and the fretboard of your guitar, especially in the winter months when things tend to get a little more dry. After wiping down the fretboard and removing the excess oil, you may be a little amazed to see how dirty and how much dirt and metal was in the fretboard after polishing the frets. That's another reason why it's good to do this type of maintenance. You can imagine that dirt grinding into the wood, grinding in the metal shavings from the steel wool, more from the steel wool than the frets, I think, just sitting inside the grains of wood, the grain, and probably damaging the wood further. So now we have a nicely polished fretboard and highly polished frets, and we have a nicely conditioned bridge plate. So the next step for me is to work on the saddle and take the saddle down a couple thousandths to reset the action on the guitar. The neck had a slight bit of relief in it, had a good bow in it. It was a nice straight neck with a little bit of relief. I think that's perfect for an acoustic guitar. So I'm not going to do much with the truss rod here because I think the neck is correct right now, but there was a lot on that saddle, so I'm going to take the saddle down a little bit using sandpaper. I just got done sanding the saddle down, so I got a nice fresh piece of sandpaper and 220 grit sandpaper. Made some measurement markings for myself. This was the line of the original, where it came out of the bridge plate from the original marking. It's going to drop in lower now. It's going to drop in underneath the cutout. And I had a line down here, if you can see it closely, where I marked where I wanted to sand to. It's important to get the bottom completely flat. so that it can sit on the piezo well, and it can, you know, that way you don't have louder strings and maybe some dead strings when it's played through amplification. If it's flat and it sits flat against the piezo, you have the best chance of having it sound the best. So you can see I took off a decent amount of material. Fresh sandpaper is a must. It makes the job easier, and a nice flat surface like this granite countertop is pretty good to work on. So I'm going to go ahead and put this back in. When you're putting your saddle back in, it's a compensated B saddle, so make sure you put it in the right way. What I'll probably do is get that 2000 grit sandpaper and just polish this up a little bit, just to, because where the strings come over the top of the saddle, I want it to be as smooth as possible. So I'll use the 2000 grit sandpaper and just clean that up, and then put it back in and restring, check the height, and if everything's good, I'll probably drop in a new set of D'Addario strings to complete the project. Okay, so I adjusted the saddle on this guitar, put the strings back on. I haven't changed the strings yet, but I'm going to. But I'm using a strobe tuner just to show you the intonation of this guitar. I'll play it open here at the there's a low E string open. There's a low E string with harmonic. Here's A. D. So you can see the guitar from open strings to the 12th fret harmonics are really, really good based on the strobe tuner. So the guitar plays better, it sounds better, it's probably going to last longer because of the frets being polished and the neck being oiled, and looking forward to playing this thing. Thanks for watching.